So as Georgina mentioned, I'll be speaking about tools and debugging at Yao in 3 weeks. But I've done this talk several times for this group, so I hope not to repeat myself. So I'll probably repeat a thing or two, but bear with me. Like, I tried to keep things new. So let's go. Oh, it doesn't work. See? Next. So, hi, I'm Zara. I work as an Android developer for Domain. I think that's it. So, what are the keys to successfully debugging stuff? Because we know that, well, apart from maybe one or two super people in the world, most of us run into bugs in our code, right? So, the key to successfully tracking down those bugs is knowing what the available tools are. So that's, give me a sec. So that's the first step. It's knowledge. Read about what's out there. Chances are someone else wanted to do what you're trying to do, and they probably wrote something about it. Who knows? And after you know about those tools, realize that there is no quote-unquote correct setup. So know the tools and find out what works best for you and your workflow. But I'm here, so I'm not going to tell you what the correct setup is or what the correct tools are, but I'm going to tell you what I found out works best for me. Cool. So first off, what are the built-in tools in Android Studio, which I hope we all use by now? Yes? Yes? No one else? No one still on Eclipse? No? No? Alright, the new stable version was just released this morning, so get on it. So, built-in tools. So, I mentioned this before already. If you're debugging fragments and their life cycle, you don't have to log D or Timber stuff all the time. There is an enable debug logging flag, which will show you stuff about fragments and what Fragment Manager is trying to do. So it shows you lifecycle state animations, bundle values, instance IDs, a lot more stuff. So this one is from Chi-Square, so you see the stuff about fragment pager, fragment view pager, fragment state pager. What's that? Fragment pager manager. You know what I mean?
Design framework.
No. So that. So the next bit is the system information dump available in Android Studio. So if you go to the Android monitor pane, there is a tiny button there. So below the button where you take the screenshots and the video, that will dump system information about your device, about your app at that current point in time. So what are those? We'll go through all these things very quickly. So the first one is Activity Manager State. So it shows your process ID, your activity lifecycle status, config values. So you see all the MCC, MNC, smallest width, height. So all those stuff you get from configuration and display metrics. All the added fragments and all the active fragments and all their states. So everything about each fragment is there. So it's kind of long. This is truncated. Fragment Manager, you can see like this down here at the bottom. And not shown in there is it will also dump the view hierarchy and choreographer state, looper state, a lot of stuff about the current activity visible on the screen. The next bit in the table I showed before is package information. So it's basically a summary of how the system sees your app based on the manifest. So if you handle deep links, all the MIME types that you support and all the schemes, all the actions, it will be listed there. If you have content providers, it will be there too. Permissions, and I think this is really cool. It will show you all the permissions granted at install time, runtime permissions you wanted to ask the user but they haven't granted or they have denied or they have granted already. So it will also show you APK splits if you do that. So your screen support, if your the flags you set in the manifest, and everything about the current app installation, like when did the user first install your app, when did they last update it. So if you're interested in that kind of thing, it's in the package information dump. So the next one is memory usage. So I think we've had quite a few talks before in this meetup about optimizing your apps. So if you're into that kind of, if you're into that stage in your app development, the memory usage dump will be useful for you. So it has, by the way, all the examples I show are from Plaid. So it has the memory allocations broken down by app, your app summary memory usage broken down by who uses the memory. So if it's the graphics layer, the system. It also shows object allocations broken down by type. So if it's a view, if it's assets, activities, parcels, so all different types of objects that your app uses. It also shows, of course, databases. And if you have bundled zip files in your app, it will show, like, it will be down there. And memory usage over time is a lot of low-level stuff. Frankly, I don't understand most of it, but I think this one is kind of interesting because it's an aggregation of statistics about memory usage over a period of time. So the things I saw were over 24 hours and over 3 hours. So it's some very low-level information there. And the last one is graphic state. So if you are interested, well, if you put in like animations, and if you're trying out new stuff, like you're switching from a list view to a recycler view, and you want to know how your app performs, you can do a graphics dump, and it will show you how well your animations and views are rendering. So, or how well you are doing your animations. So the information, there's also information about various caches used by the app, like the font renderer, the layers, the textures cache. There's also a summary of your view hierarchy, like how deep your view hierarchy is. So that's one, that's a first step that you can look at. The first thing you can look at if you want to simplify your or flatten your view hierarchy. So the next thing in the Android System Monitor is the Layout Inspector. So I think this is a much better version of the view hierarchy we had, like, I don't know, 3 years ago. So it's very much more responsive than view hierarchy. So once you click on the Layout Inspector button, like this almost instantly shows up. So is the screen, you can select an item on the right pane, like in that layout over there, and it will show all the properties and values on the other side. So you can also click on an item in this screenshot, like, woo. So you can click on, I think I clicked on the fab there. That's why it's selected, the image button. And like all the properties will be on the other pane. So, so much for the built-in stuff in Studio. There are, of course, a lot of third-party tools available out there. So we'll go through some of them. The first one and the easiest to implement is Hugo. So it's annotation-based, which means it's easy, and it shows you a lot of information, like when you call a method. So I've highlighted here the stuff that it shows you. So what are the input parameters? In this case, I have a method that takes in an array, an int, and a string. So it shows you there, it shows you how long the method executed for, and if you have any return values, this is the return value. So it's from the formidable Jake Wharton. Next is the ADB plugin. This is a plugin available, that you can get from within Android Studio. So it allows you to have really easy access to actions that you might need when testing your app. So like, these are the following actions. So ADB uninstall, kill, start, restart, clear app data, and clear app data and restart. So I find it really useful if I'm testing like scenarios where the user first installs the app, like if you go through an intro page or if you go through a tutorial or something, instead of going into settings and then app and then clear all data, that's like so difficult. But if you can make it, if you can access it from Studio, it will be really easy, right? So there's a shortcut which is Control-Shift-A, which brings the actions available for ADB, or you can do the generic search for actions, Command-Shift-A. Right. So Stetho. So Stetho was developed by Facebook in early 2015. So they open sourced it in Feb. It integrates with the Chrome Developer Tools UI for great visualization of everything and anything about your app. But what can you visualize exactly? So DB inspection, you can modify database entries from within Chrome. Shared preferences, you can modify them to network inspection, view hierarchy, dump app. Dump app is probably the least known of all the ADB actions. I think it's an ADB action. Dump app gives you command line options to modify parameters within a custom component. So in the Stetho documentation, they have some built-in dump app scripts, and they also show you how to write new ones. They said it's really easy. I haven't tried it though. So here's a sample from their blog announcement, from their announcement of Stetho. So this is, so you can see at the tabs at the top are all the available things you can inspect. The most useful thing I find Stetho for is inspecting network calls and modifying preferences, because you can just edit shared preferences from here and then like it applies immediately. So PidCat is from, guess who? Jake Wharton. So PidCat is Logcat with less pain. So I mentioned before that Logcat within Android Studio, you can change the colors depending on the on the error level, if it's warning, debug, or whatever. But with PidCat, you can run this in the terminal and it's like really nicely organized. So you can see like the log level, and it's less noisy, and Jake Wharton just fixed it last week. So because it was broken with the latest ADB plugin, but he fixed it for us. It's nice. All right, so some practical stuff. So these are things that I encounter regularly, which are weird, but it happens, so we just have to deal with it. So one is if you cannot add a breakpoint while debugging, or ADB cannot see your devices. So it happens to me all the time. So how do you fix that? First aid. So unplug the device, then replug it. Usually fixes it. Disable, then re-enable ADB integration. So from Studio, you go to Tools, Android, Enable, uncheck Enable ADB integration, and then recheck it. Or invalidate caches and restart. So it's in Studio File, invalidate caches and restart. If that doesn't work, revoke all USB debugging authorizations in your app, in your device, and then re-allow your computer. Another thing that the Studio team knows for sure is that sometimes it depends on your cable. So I know the Belkin ones do not work on my Samsung for some reason. Like it charges it, but it doesn't allow me to ADB debug for some weird reason. So we don't understand why you have to do these things all the time, but we do for now at least. So I know there are issues in the bug tracker about each of these. I suggest you search for them and then star them, because that helps the Studio team prioritize issues. But I really don't want to do all of that, right? Like you don't want to spend all your time debugging or looking through logs or looking through dumps. So what do? One is to, hopefully, better coding means less debugging. So one, use the support annotations. Who hasn't heard of support annotations? Hasn't heard? All right. So support annotations has been, it's in the support library. It allows you to annotate your methods and method parameters with the most common example is resource types. So if you have a method that accepts a string resource, for example, instead of asking for an int, and like nobody knows what that int is, you might know now that it's a string resource, but if somebody else comes into your code, they won't understand what it is without actually reading the code. So string support annotations allow you to put in annotations about these resources. So it can be at string res, at drawable res, any type of resource. It will also allow you to indicate if a method returns non-null or if a method requires a non-null value. So I highly suggest that you look at what support annotations can do for you. It's really, really helpful. Listen to lint. So lint used to be so bad, and we just like, well, yeah, whatever, Warren, whatever. I just ignore you. But now lint has gotten so much better. So and it's giving good suggestions now of how you can make your code more readable and more maintainable. So listen to lint, especially with app compat methods, right? So they're deprecating more and more methods in older support libraries, or you're moving your target SDK to 24. And sometimes we forget that there are methods that's not available in old devices. So use app compat. It will prevent you from encountering no such method errors in older APIs. Because one thing we forget, I think, as developers, is to test our app on like really old devices. Because who still has a KitKat device, right? No one, I hope. Don't do that to yourself. All right, so that's it for tonight. I will be talking more about debugging, at length in Yao. So if you have any questions, those are the things where I usually am.